You probably know him for his 26 years with ESPN or his many, many countless stories on College Gameday, but I know him as a professor and a mentor. Gene Wojciechowski, thank you so much for joining me.
Well, this is a real honor. Thank you.
So I've had the pleasure to be in two of your courses, Art of the Interview and currently Sports Commentary. And today I get to reverse the roles and interview the expert. So no pressure, but I've kind of learned straight from you how to do this. So hopefully it goes well.
Did you pass the first class?
I did pass the first class.
All right. Jury's still out on number 2.
We'll see, and hopefully this will be accounted into that. But this is all an opportunity because you decided to come back to your alma mater.
Yeah.
So what made that decision for you?
Dean Joe Mazer asked if I would be interested in considering coming back. And I hadn't really ever thought about something like that before. But he brought me and my wife out there, and we had such a good time. And it was sort of a life experience, sort of opportunity. So I figured, why not take the leap of faith and see how it went and have some fun with it. And I'm glad I did. It's been a great experience.
You came from working with professionals that have had decades of experience to going into a college classroom, working with young adults whose frontal lobes are still developing. How has that adjustment been?
Well, first of all, I get to work with professionals who have been in the business, like Brittany Tarwater, Vic Geidner, and Aaron Westside, and Melanie Fazer. So it's not like I'm the only person there with experience. There are a lot of my colleagues with professional experience, and that's been a thrill to learn from them. And as far as frontal lobes and that sort of thing, well, I probably get more out of experiencing what the students have to say and getting their perspectives and learning what they think and what they want to learn than the other way around. So I'm really the lucky one, and the poor students are the ones hoping not to get the F pluses.
No F pluses for me so far. But we'll see.
Okay.
So when you were at Tennessee, you were involved in the Daily Beacon?
I was, yes. I was the managing editor. Well, I actually was a sports reporter initially, and the sports editor at the time was this long-haired guy, and I had actually long hair at the time too, if you can believe it. Was a guy named Paul Feinbaum, who we know has gone on to creating his own cottage industry in college football for ESPN. And then I kind of worked my way up to managing editor, and then eventually was the editor of the Beacon.
That's amazing that you used to work with Paul Feinbaum here, and now
Yeah.
you guys went on the global stage. Is there anything that you remember from that time that has stuck with you through your career?
Well, it was a remarkable experience. Again, I mean, it was an independent newspaper as it is now, and we were sort of the feisty insurgents who were trying to break stories and do our thing. And, it was great to learn that way. And it's still great to see it happening on a daily basis at the Beacon and with TVC and Towards Sports, which weren't there when I was there. I'm old enough when in our classroom we had electric typewriters. So, it's just bizarre to think about. But to be teaching in those same classrooms that I sat at decades earlier is a surreal experience. But it's cool and fun in a weird way.
And he's the only teacher I have that makes us print out our papers and our assignments and turn them in physical form.
Yeah,
So
I know. Sorry about that.
keeping tradition alive. No,
Yes.
I'm kidding.
I'm not making you use a typewriter at least.
Yes, it's true. I appreciate that.
Okay.
Yeah. So one of my favorite parts of your classes is that you bring in some of your colleagues and former coworkers that are some of the best in the industry at what they do. I've heard from dozens of sideline reporters, analysts, even coaches. And they're also some of the busiest people in the nation. How do you encourage them to come speak to your classes? Specifically, Jay Billis came to speak to us right in the middle of March Madness. How does that happen?
Well, you like to think that over the 26 years that I spent at ESPN and then prior to that at assorted newspapers around the country, I worked with a lot of these people, and some of them became colleagues, some of them became friends and colleagues. And so, you pull in a favor once in a while. And so I've asked them, and a lot of them have been very gracious to say yes, from Reese Davis and Mike Wilbon and Maria Taylor, and you mentioned Jay Billis and countless others. They've been very kind, and I really do think in our business, we're in awe of what student journalists are doing and how far ahead they are of where we were. I was not classically trained as a TV person. I mean, I'm awful on TV, but I could tell a story, and so it's been fun to have these folks come in, and again, almost after every one of my guest speakers come in, they'll text me and say, those were great questions. I really enjoyed that. So when I hear that, I know we're both on the right track.
That's awesome to hear. And now the reason we're here is because of your new book, All Carry, a fiction novel, which is very exciting. So after having 12 other books published, most of them nonfiction and co-written, what inspired this piece?
Well, I mean, we're out here at the practice facility at UT, and I love golf, and I covered it for a long, long time. In fact, I was down at the Masters for a couple of days, and I wanted to sort of use my institutional knowledge of covering, 75 majors and assorted other tournaments, and knowing some of those players and knowing the caddies, the agents, those courses in that world. I wanted to incorporate all that knowledge and sort of wrap it in a blanket of authenticity, and use the premise that I had, which were a set of magical clubs that were meant for Jack Nicklaus and made for Jack Nicklaus, and then put them in the hands of an ordinary person and see what would happen. And it would be like me handing you these sort of supernatural clubs, and you being able to hit 400 yards with a driver, with a persimmon driver. And if you don't know golf, and even if you do, you might not know what a persimmon driver is. And if you made a fist, go ahead, that's about the size of a persimmon driver, okay? If you made 5 fists, that would be the size of today's modern driver. So I wanted this sort of old-fashioned club, old-fashioned irons, to have these sort of supernatural powers, and then put them in the hands of somebody who was a 18 handicap and see what would happen.
I love that, and from reading this, I found that the way that people who play golf, they talk about it so differently than any other sport. Do you think part of that is because it's a sport that you can play? Like, you can't really put on football pads and just go out there, but golf is for anyone.
Golf is for anyone, and sure, we can play football when we're younger, and we can play basketball, and we can do those things. The thing about golf is we can relate to it more. Unless you're down on the field, you have no idea, absolutely zero idea, what it's like to play in the NFL or college football. I mean, the physicality of it is otherworldly. But we can go to the Masters, and we can be 10 feet away from Rory McIlroy as he's hitting a shot, and we can get a sense of it. And we've played the game, so we know kind of, I can hit that shot, or I can miss that putt, or I can scull it like some of the players did at Augusta National this past week. So it's more relatable. And some of the courses where they play the majors, we can actually play those courses. You can't do that. I'm not going to go to, name whatever field in the NFL at Lambeau Field. I'm not going to go play football at Lambeau Field. So there's this relatability standpoint of golf. And it's a game that we can grow up with, and it's a game we can grow old with. And you just can't say that about any other sport. So golf, to me, is the common denominator of our lives when it comes to athletics, because we can play it from the time we're little kids to the time we're really old.
You mentioned growing up with golf. Your dad is who you dedicated this book to for putting the first club in your hands.
Yeah.
Can you bring us to that moment when you first were introduced to the sport?
Well, I was, I don't know, 9, 10 years old. And in my basement are two sets of old clubs, my dad's set of old clubs and the set that he gave me. And even though my wife has said, can you not please get rid of those things one of these days, I've hung on to them. And really the inspiration for All Carry was the premise of how can I use these old clubs. And the clubs that my dad has and the clubs that he gave me, the Persimmon Woods, are McGregor's, and that's what Jack Nicklaus played. And so I just kind of adapted that to the book. And you're too young to remember it, but there is this great book called The Natural and another book called Field of Dreams. And they were baseball books, and then they were made into movies. And in The Natural, Roy Hobbs, this baseball player, his bat is called Wonder Boy. And I loved the romanticism of that. And so I kind of stole that idea to adapt Wonder Boy, the magical bat, to my book. And those clubs have these supernatural qualities. And so that was sort of the inspiration. And my dad gave me those clubs. I still have them, and I'm never getting rid of them. But they are definitely, their soul and their spirit are on the pages of this book.
You can tell, and a big theme throughout the book is a father-son relationship.
Yeah.
Is that at all reflective of what your relationship with your dad looked like?
Well, a little bit. My dad was a career Air Force. He fought in 2 wars. He was a lieutenant colonel, and he retired. And he spent a lot of time away. I mean, when he was in Vietnam, he was gone for more than a year. And so as a kid growing up, there was a resentment factor. And in this book, one of the characters is a TV golf reporter who's gone all the time, which was much like my own life, my career. I was on the road 150 days a year. And so, my kids didn't see me a lot of time. My wife did not see me a lot of times. And so there's a price to be paying for all that. So I kind of channeled some of that into these pages again. Again, I took some of my own personal experiences and adapted it to this.
Going off of that, you've talked about the composites of your life that you threw into this book. I wanted to talk about the character Buddy. He has a lot of modern day slang that's used, especially in the beginning of this book. Was that at all influenced by your experience as a college professor?
Oh, sure. Yeah, I think I use words and figures of speech and phrases that I'd never heard before from some of the students. And I have 2 grandsons who speak in a language that might have been Portuguese. And I'm like, wait, explain that to me. What does mid mean and things like that? And I have nieces and nephews who are college aged and a little older that I draw from. So I'm constantly taking notes, and I'm constantly trying to say, okay, that would work with that character. That would work with that character. I'm going to use this. Buddy is the son of Joe Riley, the TV reporter in this, who goes to the University of Wisconsin. So I draw from being at Madison 100 times for different assignments and using that. So everything is, they say write what you know. Well, I write what I know, and if I don't know it, I try to learn it and then use it on the pages.
There's references to the University of Tennessee as well, seeing it all throughout. But speaking of taking notes, I was reading this and there's so much intricate detail about the Masters and Augusta. Were you ever there a few years ago taking notes for things that you might include in the book?
Well, not on purpose, but I've covered 21 Masters. And so, again, almost by osmosis, it just kind of enters your brain. It stays there. And so I know that place really well. And in my work with ESPN, I've walked that course 1,000 times, and I've been in that clubhouse, and I've been in the crow's nest, and I've been down in the locker room, and I've talked to those players in the flash area, and I've done the interviews with the champion after the green jacket ceremony, and I've gotten to know some of those members, and I know the history and the tradition of the place. And so when you have that much, you can't help but want to use it. Otherwise, it'd just be this colossal waste. And so I tried to use all that. And again, the more authentic you can make it, the more possible it is to take that leap of faith when it comes to magic gloves meant for Jack Nicklaus. Suddenly, if you surround it with enough realism and authenticity, it's like, oh, okay, well, that sort of makes sense. And okay, maybe I can see how that would happen, and I'm going to turn the page and believe it a little more.
And you're writing about a TV golf reporter.
Yeah.
You were a TV golf reporter. And one moment specifically that stood out to me was his first time on air.
Yeah.
Not being classically trained on air, he was a writer. Is that at all based off reality?
That is absolutely based almost detail for detail on my very first time on camera on Sports Center. In the book, it takes place at the Open Championship in St. Andrews. In reality, it took place off the first fairway at Augusta National, and it was a meltdown of such colossal proportions that I never should have been on TV again. In fact, as I write in the book, I went back and told the coordinating producer, if you never put me on TV again, I'll completely understand. And so, yes, I use that anecdote almost detail for detail just to show that it's a human experience. And TV is not easy. And TV is, the people who make it look easy are so great at what they do. So I wanted to show that this character has evolved. And in every story, in every book, characters and storylines have to evolve. They have to have an arc. And so to me, every story is a 3-act play. And in this case, Joe Riley, that TV reporter who's semi-autobiographical with some of my own experiences, has to evolve.
I love that you mentioned it in the book because you've mentioned it in both of the classes I've been a part of, and it is such a great story to hear as an aspiring TV broadcaster. So I appreciate that. But going off of the 3-act play and all of your approach to that, as someone who's been a writer your entire life, this process probably looked a little bit different than what you were used to. How was that process for you?
Well, there are some writers who, or even people who do TV stories, movies or documentaries, they storyboard everything. They have their 3x5 cards and a big wall, and they'll, right here, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that. I knew how I wanted to start the book. I knew kind of the beginning of Act 2, what I wanted to do, and I knew how I wanted to end the book. And then it was a matter of filling in all of the gaps between. And that was the fun part to me. So as you write these characters, you learn their voices and you become them. And then suddenly this is what this character would do because that's his personality. And I'm going to introduce this character, but I need to give the backstory of that character. And so you just would find yourself spackling all the holes in the wall. And before you knew it, you had Act 1 done. And now you start on Act 2. And then, you want to surprise the reader. You want to have twists and turns, and hopefully they don't guess every one. I mean, how many times you've sat in a movie and, I see this coming. I wanted to reduce that possibility as much as I could. So it's a lot of fun to just create something out of nothing.
There were a lot of components that I wasn't expecting, so I do think that you did that successfully, and I was on the edge of my seat. As someone who doesn't follow golf, I was excited and really into it. So what would you tell someone who doesn't know much about golf and is maybe a little bit nervous to read a golf-focused book?
Yeah. Well, I'd like to think that there are universal themes. In this case, it's father and son, but you could easily apply it to mother and daughter or father and daughter. I mean, parent and child, especially college aged or teenaged, that's a universal thing. I mean, you know, you've probably had your moments with your parents. I had my moments with my kids. You know, that's universal. The idea of overcoming obstacles is universal. And that certainly happens in this book. The idea of romanticizing a sport, I think, is a universal theme. And so I just use golf as a vehicle. And so if you don't know golf, well, what I do is try to educate you in golf. And so, you know, my favorite books are the ones where I didn't know something, but by the end of the book, I've learned something. And so I hope by the end of this book, you've learned something about golf, even if you don't care about golf. But really, the key is to get you invested in the characters and in the storyline. And golf is just a vehicle to get us from Act 1 to the end of Act 3.
I learned a lot, and really wanting to tune into the drive, chip, and putt next year.
Yeah, there you go.
I think that's fascinating.
Okay.
But the focus of a lot of this is Jack Nicklaus, and you actually had the opportunity to cover him.
I did.
Did you send him the book?
I did send him the book, and I've interviewed Jack Nicklaus a number of times, and he was in a way an inspiration for this book because, you know, my dad played his woods and his irons, and those were given to me, and he's who kind of I grew up with before Tiger Woods. And so he's a string throughout that book. And yes, I absolutely sent him a copy.
Did he respond?
Not yet. He probably just got it about a week or so ago. So we'll see if he reads it, if we hear back from him.
He was at the Masters too, right? So he was busy.
He's there for the Champions
Yes.
Dinner, yes.
Yeah. Do you frequent garage sales?
No, I do not, but my wife did and does, and so the beginning or early in the book, there's a scene where a mom, you know, has to get to the garage sale. And I've lived that nightmare with my own wife, and have been stuck holding the purse and going, dear God, are we really buying another salt and pepper shaker at a garage sale, or, you know, whatever ridiculous thing that she finds. But again, that's a universal theme, and the two kids being stuck in the car with her, lamenting their fate, is another universal theme.
Are you going to start going now?
No, I'm giving it up. It's like asparagus. I don't ever want to see it again.
I love asparagus.
Okay, well, good for you. You can have my portions.
Oh, perfect. Well, with that, thank you so much for your time, for doing this, and for bringing your expertise to the classroom. It's been an honor to learn from you and to read your work in real time. So,
Well, the sucking ups is helping. I can see a B or an A in your future.
that's so exciting. Glad it worked out. Thank you so much.